Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation, and I've got Joe B from Average Joe's web channel. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. Great to talk. Always great to talk to you.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah.
are going to do a show today in defense of Come Taste the Band, Deep Purple. So just
Yeah.
a little bit about this album. It came out in 1975. Ritchie Blackmore had gone. Um, the band wanted to continue on, especially David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. They went through a fairly long audition process. They were looking at a number of guitarists, Steve Marriott, Dave Clemson from Humble Pie and Colosseum. Didn't work out. And one day this guy came
Rory
in.
Gallagher too, I believe.
Rory
Right?
Gallagher
Yeah.
was in the mix as well. I think they were talking, but it never came to fruition, Jeff Beck. But anyway, they had an audition process, and somebody mentioned Tommy Bolin. So Tommy Bolin was a hotshot guitarist. He was going through Billy Cobham, Spectrum album, the James Gang, and he was a guitarist on the rise. And they asked him to do an audition, and this guy came in dressed in Indian gear. He looked like a total rock star. They auditioned him, and it was magic. They were really clicking, and he was in the band. So came out in 1975. It did reasonable, top 20 around the world. I wouldn't say it went to those Mark III, Mark II levels, but it was still pretty tidy, and they were still a major draw card. So I think what we'll do in this show is, Joe, hit it off. Tell me what you think of the album, and we'll just, talk and go through the songs.
So you are the third person in perhaps the last 5 years that really made me go back to revisit this album. The first one is a business associate I used to have. He's probably one of the best guitarists I knew that didn't play professionally. He just would play in bands, and he just loved this album. He stood by it, said, "Come Taste the Band is awesome." So I would, go back and listen to it. Second is when I saw Glenn Hughes on his Purple tour, and they played "Getting Tighter," and I absolutely love that song. That's one of my favorite Deep Purple songs, period. And then you had me re-listen to this album. I really like this album. I almost to the point where I love this album. I think it falls into almost that Aerosmith pocket. It's got that funky rock and roll. It's definitely, that Richie's gone, but the band was going in this direction with Burn and Stormbringer, but it rocks. I really enjoy it. It's a great listen. Getting Tighter is by far my favorite song. I listen to that constantly, but it opens up with Coming Home, and it has that Judas Priest used it too, that sound effect on
It's like a
Exciter.
siren. Yeah,
Yeah,
like sort of a
yeah.
siren.
And it pumps. That's pure Deep Purple. And Lady Luck is a great song. Dealer, I really like. I Need Love, The Drifter, Love Child. The last two songs are kind of slow for me, but as a whole, I really like the album. And I'm trying to go back to think about my history with Deep Purple, because 75 is really when I started getting really heavily into hard rock and metal, and that is because of Kiss Alive. But I had Smoke on the Water on 45. So my history with Deep Purple at the time was, you would get Made in Japan, and then I remember my cousin had Made in Europe. And so I got into the Coverdale stuff even more because I thought Burn, especially that live version, was just amazing. So it was like bits and pieces here and there. And I remember someone talking about Come Taste the Band, but I never really got around to buying it till later on. I can't even remember when I really purchased it. It became when I had to become completist with all the bands I liked.
Yes.
So Deep Purple, because I got into them late in the game in their history, I was picking and choosing different albums to purchase from them. Not like where I got into Aerosmith, Kiss, Ted Nugent, and All In, Queen, and those are the bands that. So Deep Purple was a little bit before I got into it, but everyone knew Smoke on the Water. But Martin Birch produced the album. The big question is, is it really a that whole thing, is it a Deep Purple album without Richie Blackmore? And just before, Peter, you and I were talking about the Creatures of the Night box set that's coming out. And I just remember it just makes me think of when I saw Vinnie Vincent with Kiss, and he didn't play any Aces solos, and you would hear that with Tommy Bolin. People were pissed off live that he couldn't replicate Richie's solos, and he would do his own thing. But as far as an album goes, it's definitely what I love. It's driving hard rock with a little bit of funk in it, and Getting Tighter is probably in my top 5 Deep Purple songs. I love it. It's just, and Glenn Hughes sings that.
Yeah, look, his vocals, I think both the Cove and Glenn Hughes vocals are on peak form.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you hear any, like, a little Whitesnake in this as well?
I think it's I think it is the prototype for Whitesnake.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was wondering. Yeah.
I think it's heavily, there's a lot of Whitesnake influence, but there's deep grooves on this. So, with Stormbringer, you could see that they were getting much more into that really funk R&B, which Blackmore hated. And that's that pushed Blackmore out of the band. He made the decision that he wanted to follow that neoclassical and form Rainbow. He wanted to go in that direction. But Hughes and Coverdale were listening to Stevie Wonder. They were listening to Sly and the Family Stone. They wanted to have that hard rock of like Jeff Beck, but have that little bit of a groove and funk. And I think Tommy Bolin just fitted the whole band like a glove.
Yes.
Socially,
I'm sorry. No, also at this time, I wanted to interject, with what you were saying. I know that Glenn Hughes had a solid friendship with David Bowie, and this is right around Fame and the Station to Station era, which is that heavy funk too. So I think that had something to do with their, that type of music they like.
100%. I think musically it was a great relationship on record, maybe not so live. But I think socially it was a disaster, and it was because of drug abuse, and we'll talk about that more later. And that really sort of formed the demise of Deep Purple, unfortunately. But I think the album, the production is not top-notch Martin Birch. I've always had an issue that it's been a little bit underproduced. I like Martin Birch, and he's done some fantastic albums. I mean, he's a heavy metal producer extraordinaire. Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Rainbow, Black Sabbath. But this album always sounded a bit underproduced, and it was only until I saw the this came out, the 35th anniversary, and Kevin Shirley was able to do a remix. Anyway, I can't show that very well, but check it out. And he got the tapes and he did a remix, pushed the keyboards up, pushed the guitar up, and everything sounded a little bit sonically better, more cleaner, and you could hear it. To me, a lot of the tracks on this album through Martin Birch seems a little bit muddied. Like Coming Home is an absolute stone cold rocker. Deep Purple have great opening tracks. Every album they have a killer opening track, and that is a killer song. But to me, on the original version, it seems a little bit muddied, and all the way through. But the songwriting is it's stellar. And
Tommy Bolin writes the majority of the songs, and that was encouraged when he got into the band.
Well, he had also a solo career. He had Teaser that came out pretty soon after, and when they were doing their live shows, he would have a spot where he would do one or two songs, and he does sing on I think on one of the songs, I think Getting Tighter, he does a little bit of a song bit on this album. But I think the playing is fantastic. And even the late, great John Lord said, I listened to Come Taste the Band the other day, and wow, what a great album. The only criticism I would have, we should have gone under a different name. So I think a lot of the older guys in the band, like Ian Pace and John Lord, were grappling, they were seeing the drug abuse and all a band fracturing outside, but the music itself was very strong, and I think that they may have found it difficult to reconcile this was still under the Deep Purple moniker. But I reckon this album has aged really well. But some of those Deep Purple albums haven't aged as well, like The Battle Rages On, with Ian Gillan. To me, that hasn't aged as well as this album. It's got a timeless sound.
One thing I really wanted to ask you is, what do you think of the album cover? Did that hurt them or help them? It's kind of creepy, I think.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah. It's, I don't find it terribly offensive.
No, I don't find it offensive.
Typical of a montage in the day.
Yeah. Right.
There's a lot worse.
I know. Yeah.
What do you think of Bolan as a guitar player?
I love it. I mean, he does. So I see him more in a mold of like, riff-based slide. He does a lot of slide work. I'm thinking Brad Whitford, Joe Perry-esque work on this. Yeah, I like it. It's totally different from Richie Blackmore.
Yes,
for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I enjoy his guitar work a lot. And like I said, that business associate I had, one of the best guitarists I ever knew, and he swore by this album. And
yeah,
he's the guy that I'm like, hey, I got to go back and listen to this, because he's like, oh yeah, Come Taste the Band's amazing. But he was that. No, actually, this guy could play anything, but he really loved the blues above everything else.
Absolutely. With Bolan, he was more of a jazz fusion. So Blackmore was more, neoclassical guitarist. And, he had a lot of pyrotechnics, a lot of strings to his bow. But I think Bolan's guitar work was more subtle, a lot of jazz fusion. And when you listen to the songs, he kind of weaves in and out. So there's a lot of guitar work where he's finger picking. And, with the verse, chorus, a lot of his guitar work kind of weaves in and out, where Blackmore did a riff, and then does the guitar solo. And which is kind of very standard 4 on the floor type, hard rock. But I think Bolan's guitar playing on this album is sublime. It's really, really classy, but it's different. And that's what pissed off a lot of people at the time.
It also too, Richie Blackmore was a game changer, and I don't consider Tommy Bolan a game changer. So he had some pretty huge shoes to fill. Yeah, I mean, they're
so difficult.
Yeah, no one sounded like Richie Blackmore. You can only name, a handful of guitarists, and Richie Blackmore is one of them. So to put him in that position is almost impossible.
And he was getting catcalled. So when he was, doing shows, like they did this tour of Australia in '76, people were, yelling out, "Where's Blackers? Where's Blackmore?" And I heard that Bolan was quite a sensitive soul, and he really took offense to that. And maybe that was part of his, psych to because he went down a really heavy drug path. They were into some serious stuff. I'm talking the heroin, the junk, cocaine, and that cost.
Glenn Hughes's book, it
shocking.
Goes into that. But also, we had a Motley Crue episode on my channel. I want to do another one with you. But in the dirt, the Japanese promoter tells Nikki Sixx, he goes, "I've only seen one other guy act like this, and it was Tommy Bolan." He goes, "I don't want you winding up like him." So it had to be bad if he's going to, because Nikki Sixx was out of control.
Yeah. I'll share a story. This just shows how bad it got live with the drug abuse. So they do this tour of Japan, and Bolan injects heroin into his arm, falls asleep on his arm for 8 hours. And when he wakes up, he can't use his arm. They have to pay the Budokan 3 nights. So basically, he's playing chords, and John Lord and Pace are carrying the show. The 3rd night, he got a bit better, and they actually did a recording of that called The Last Concert in Japan, or Last Night in Budokan, which you can see on YouTube. I watched it the other night, and you can distinctly see that he's not quite the Bolan, the flash of Bolan that was before. He's playing a lot of chords. He's doing a lot of shapes, but it's disguising that he's not quite there. But man, that's pretty irresponsible, really. Can you imagine your
Yeah.
flash guitar player and he can only play chords because he can't use his arm? And yeah, there was other incidents that happened that really affected their playing. And you've got some guys like Pace and Lord who put 100%. You know, they are consistently at 100% every show. And you've got some, you know, you've got the Tommy Bolin up front, who's got substance abuse issues, and you can certainly see when he's performing, when the drugs take effect, he's trailing off. It must have been really hard for those guys to see that
And
sort of happen.
You throw Glenn Hughes into the mix, and
Yes,
yeah, you can see how the band finally, it just broke up. You always
absolutely.
wondered why. I always wondered why Coverdale never had Hughes back into the mix, and they remained friends. But maybe Coverdale just was like, no. I think even Glenn Hughes admits that, because Glenn Hughes didn't clean up till like the '90s, I believe. But
Yes, it was a long time. But
yeah,
while recording this album, Glenn Hughes was not able to record Coming Home. He was basically he went on a drug bender,
yeah,
and he was not able to cut any bass on that track. So the bass on Coming Home is actually done by Tommy Bolin. Glenn
okay.
Hughes doesn't do any vocals on it. So yeah, this is a drug album. Unfortunately, there are substance abuse problems, and that sort of came out. But out of all of this, there is some truly great songs. One of my favorite songs of all time, Deep Purple, and I know you said it's one of the slower ones, but it really moves me, is You Keep On Moving. I love that
Okay.
song. And I just love the way that their vocals between Hughes and Coverdale weave. Because if you hear a lot of the live stuff in this era, it seems like it can get a bit competitive between Hughes and Coverdale. And I don't reckon that they truly got the right synergy sometimes live as to who was the lead singer and who wasn't. Because Hughes has got a fantastic voice. Coverdale's got a different voice. It's more of the Paul Rodgers, very rich tone, and Hughes is more of the Banshee, Stevie Wonder soul. And sometimes when you listen to it live, they got quite, competitive. How did you view the Mark III, the dynamics between the two singers? Did you think it was just rightly balanced, or sometimes it could
Well,
get a
my
bit out of whack?
first introduction was hearing Burn live, and then seeing the California Jam, and I'm like, these are, you see Glenn Hughes with the suit on, and I'm like, this dude is super cool. So
Mm,
at that age, I thought that was just beyond cool. So Burn live was my the
yep.
first two introductions to it. So I like the synergy a lot, but I could see your point where they do compete at times, and it's you have two great singers in a band, and is that something that works or not? I mean, it carried them. I think it carried them through three really good to great albums, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I rate this album probably. I did a top 5 show. I rated this number 4, and I rated Burn as number 1, and then the Ian Gillan albums. So I'm a little bit contrarian, but I've always rated this album much more highly. And my view is, I think Tommy Bolin is probably the second best guitarist that Deep Purple ever had. They definitely struck some
Yeah.
gold when they recorded
Yeah.
this album, but it's just the social aspect that I think killed them. And it was
It's
just,
interesting you bring that up, because Mach 3, I do prefer Mach 3 to Mach 2.
yeah,
And I also know that Lars Ulrich of Metallica prefers Mach 3 to Mach 2, because Mach 2 is all, Ian Gillan and Smoke in the Water. But yeah, I like the Coverdale Hughes era better.
yeah.
And it's interesting you brought that up, because we're definitely on the same page there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about is that they are a good-looking band. They look like rock stars. Like Bolan
Yes, they do.
looked like a rock god guitarist, with the Indian garb, and you could understand he sort of had a lot of charisma, and it's just such a tragedy that he passed away so early. 1976, Joe. That's just
I
such a
know.
long time ago. And
Yeah.
he's still talked about now. But if you look at his discography, it was, albeit quite brief. 2 solo albums, correct me if I'm wrong. A little bit of Spectrum with Billy Cobham, the James Gang, and there's a few bootlegs that come out, and I've got
He replaced Joe Walsh in a James game, right? Yeah.
Yes. So he's still talked about, but if you look at the band and looking at that YouTube concert in Japan, there was definitely charisma, and you could see David Coverdale was starting to get his stage moves. So
Right.
that first concert in 1973. Okay, so imagine this, Joe. We recruit you into Deep Purple, Joe, and you've got to play in front of 500,000 people.
Yeah.
And David Coverdale said that he had a check in his back pocket for $1 million. You'd be scared shitless. It's pretty confronting.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. And then your guitarist goes crazy at the end of the show.
Yeah. Linda Lovelace was apparently hanging around in the back, harassing Deep Purple.
Yeah.
It's just all happening. It's wild.
It's one of my favorite performances to watch ever. I watch it repeatedly because it's not only it's David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes, and they're performing magnificently, but then Richie just goes off the rails at the end.
Yeah, you don't piss off Richie because he wanted to get the band at the right time.
Right.
He didn't want to put it in daylight because nobody wants to open their set and it's still daylight. So it was all show. It was
Palmer as the headlining band. You had Black Sabbath playing before Deep Purple.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going a few times to see Tony Iommi. I think the only time Tony Iommi without a mustache.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely. But getting back to the 73, you look at Coverdale and he's still, he hasn't got the songcraft, and you could sort of see he's good, but he's a little nervous, as you would be. But when you get to looking at the footage in that mess of a concert, the last concert in Tokyo, which is on YouTube, you can see that he has got command of the stage and he's got the flash and he's doing the stage moves. And that's why I'm thinking that not only the songcraft on this album is a prototype for Whitesnake, I think the whole stage show around that was building, was a learning curve and building him into the David Coverdale that we knew in Whitesnake.
Right. So I'm thinking by default, he had to go into that leadership position.
Yeah.
Because, the other guys are always taking a, back seat, and Glenn Hughes and Tommy Bolin were a mess. Richie Blackmore's gone. So he's got to be the front man and be the leader of the band. And I definitely, I wanted to bring that up to you because I definitely, as much as it's a Deep Purple album, I definitely hear a lot of Whitesnake in this. And
yeah, just the lyrical themes like Love Child, Drifter,
right.
Dealer, I Need Love. Yeah, you can hear a lot of the sort of the David Coverdale-isms coming into it. Hey, I like that another one, the Ode to G, the little ballad that John Lord, apparently John Lord was just writing something on the piano, and Glenn Hughes heard it and they just put it down in 1 or 2 takes. And I don't think Glenn Hughes has sung more beautifully. It just goes to show that when he had it and he had it and he was just, his voice is just so rich. And it was just a shame that his career, that's why his voice is just so preserved now, because there was a period of about 10 to 15 years where you call them the lost years. He did hardly any live work. He might have put down some records or sessions, but he wasn't terribly prolific because he was going through drug abuse and he was going through those issues. And because he wasn't flogging his voice and going out on tour, that's why now, as a 70-ish plus rock performer, he's got a superlative voice. It's just outstanding. It's preserved. Like I said,
I saw him in that Purple tour and it was amazing. His voice was great. He's in great shape. And his band, you don't even know who these guys are. I get amazed by all these backup bands how much talent is out there. So he plays "You Fool No One." I mean, he basically plays all the well-known songs by the Coverdale era Mach 3, although he did play "Getting Tighter," which was amazing. But
Yeah,
so he plays "You Fool No One." They actually go into the drum solo, and he has this drummer that no one knows, just out of this world drum
yeah,
solo, one of the best I've ever seen. But
yeah,
yeah, he's in great shape.
yeah. Hey, what do you think of Pacey's drumming on this album? I think in this era, the Burn era, and even around Come Taste the Band, he was just out of this world. He's drumming and
Yeah,
watching him live, fantastic.
yeah, I've always been a fan of his, but definitely, yeah, always brings it. Consistent, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I always like Glenn Hughes bass playing. I don't think that
I
gets
love
the
it.
kudos that
Yeah,
it deserves.
I thought he was like the coolest looking guy.
Yeah.
He had the
He
pimp
says he
suit
doesn't
on.
practice. He doesn't practice.
Yeah,
So he's got feel. So he's one of those one percenters musicians that they don't have to practice. Because I don't know if you've ever done music, Joe, and it was all about drummed into you, practice, practice, practice. He's
you
one
got
of
to
these
practice.
musical freaks, doesn't practice and just
Right.
goes into a session and he's a field musician and just does it. I love
Yeah,
his
I've
bass
heard that about
lines.
Billy Duffy and the Cult. That not too many other people. Everyone else has to keep up with their craft. And there's guys out there you can tell that don't keep up with their craft and try to still tour. But
Hello,
but
Ace.
yeah, no, I what's that?
Hello, Ace.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. I'm like, practice, come on. But he's got
Yeah.
a backup Nick can play. But yeah, no, I have nothing bad to say about this album. I'm glad we're talking about it. And like I said, you were the third person that had me
Mm,
go back and listen to, which is a great thing.
yeah,
But Getting Tighter is like head and shoulder. I just friggin' love that song. And if you want to
absolutely.
talk about that a little bit, how you feel about that song.
Oh, I love that song, and I love the funk workout, and it just shows that they could shift gears. They can go from a four on the floor rocker into that sort of funk groove, and it was just basically like a duck to water for Hughes just to play that song. But that's probably one of my favorite songs on the album. I think my favorite song on the album is "You Keep On Moving" because I find that emotionally affecting. And again, referencing a YouTube clip, Whitesnake did the Purple tour. And it was basically they put out an album where they reimagined all the Purple songs. I didn't like it because it was really heavy-handed. It didn't have subtlety, and it was just basically like all these Deep Purple songs by Sledgehammer. Anyway, they did the Purple tour, and I think it was played at some one of the theaters in San Francisco, and Glenn Hughes came on stage, and Coverdale and Hughes were back, and they did "You Keep On Moving," and oh my god, it's like a shiver up your spine just seeing them. And
Yeah.
these guys have been through so much, and to see them together, it's just like they've got a bond. It's a close friendship, and they've gone through so much, and you could just see the joy in those two just being on stage together and singing. And the Cubs' voice is not as good as it was, but he was deferring and he was just pointing to
Right.
Hughes like, "You're
Yeah,
amazing."
yeah. They're wrapping it up, right? I mean, David's voice is done.
It
There's
is.
videos out there. I went to see them a few years back. I was there for the sound check. So they played next to Soldier Field right on the lakefront in Chicago. And I was going for a walk on the lakefront. You could hear the sound check.
Wow.
And so that was raw and you could hear how bad he was. So it's covered up a little bit more when it's live, but yeah,
Because
I mean,
they've got a very good band where they all
right.
sing and they can just paper it and harmonize. But David Coverdale is my favorite vocalist of all time, and I will defend
I,
him.
I
But
can't argue.
yeah,
Yeah,
but life goes on, and we can't always be at that peak because
right.
it's like opera. You're an opera singer, and you just can't
Yeah.
maintain that range forever.
No.
Um,
No.
in regards to this album, I'll put a question to you. What if Bolan didn't die? What if they continued on? What do you think the second album? Do you think it would have gone down more of that, more of the same, more funk, more blues, and even more into the Whitesnake prototype?
Definitely.
Just imagine. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think they're looking at the first Whitesnake album. I think you're going down that route
Yeah.
for sure. You can't totally say that because Tommy Bolin's not on that album,
Mm.
so it would it would sound more like Come Taste the Band. But I don't know, were they even viable because they broke up. I don't know. Was
They,
it inevitable that they would have to break up? That's my
well,
question.
they broke up basically. They did this disastrous performance in Liverpool. I
Right.
think it was in 1976 where the performance was just totally shambolic. And David Coverdale was in tears at the backstage, and he just sort of said, I quit. It's over."
Yeah.
And I think he told John Lord and Pace, and they said, "Yeah, we've already decided it's over." But it was, I think they all, because of, they just could not. They were very proud, and for a band like that that has a high standard, and that whole last tour was like very hit and miss, and more miss than hit, and yeah, they just, that's how they basically broke up. They just drugs
I
and
have a
abuse.
I have a question for you. I always paralleled Deep Purple with Van Halen because not so much musically, but the lineup changes and the different shifts musically that they had. And even with Gary Sharon, I'm not saying that Van Halen 3 is anywhere near Come Taste the Band, but it kind of has that, outlier album quality to it. But I always see these two bands as um, well, Van Halen, he's an icon, a game changer, but I do think there's kind of a tarnishment with the lineup changes, such drastic lineup changes.
Yeah,
In the height at the height of their success.
yeah, that's been the
Yeah.
problem why the legacy has been tarnished, because there's been so many damn lineup changes, and
Right.
they even had a second go at it. So we spoke about it in the Mark II reunion in '84 under the House of the Blue Light. And with Perfect Strangers, there was so much goodwill. It was the #2 drawing concert
After
tour around the
Springsteen.
world behind
Yeah.
Springsteen. That's not shabby. They were
No.
doing big business, and they kind of stuffed it up with the House of the Blue Light. Basically, I think Blackmore may have injured his arm, and they may not have put the right single through. Well, there was all these different bad business decisions, and the steam had evaporated. Yeah, there was no momentum. So
Right.
I agree with you. When you have a band go through multiple changes, there's no sort of investment with the fans into the band, because you might like a certain person or a certain individual, but yeah, 2 albums later they're gone. And
So another question I want to ask you, coming from Australia or Europe, they're on a different level, correct, than they are in the United States?
Europe, they're a deity.
Yeah.
They're absolutely huge. In Germany, I know for a fact that every album they put out goes to #1. I was in Germany like 6, 7 years ago, and I was in just a music store, and they had the charts, and Steve Morse, Deep Purple album #1. So
Yeah.
they are a deity over there.
What about Australia?
Um, Mid-size. They're known more of an older generation.
Yeah.
Sabbath probably have more currency because you had a lot of the grunge bands and alternative pick up on that. But yeah, look, sort of, you've got a lot of the 50 plus that go to their shows. Probably not as much cross generational, but they would sell out maybe a 7 to 8 thousand seater. Look, they were phenomenally big in Australia in the early '70s. So Machine Head went #1. Fireball, I think, went #1 as well. They had a compilation of the very best of Deep Purple that went #1. But in America, as I said, I think the last time that they truly had some heat on the charts was Perfect Strangers, and that was in
Yes.
1984.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
that,
then when that happened, the Coverdale era was totally forgotten. And then the Whitesnake album becomes huge.
well,
The
Whitesnake were out.
1987 album.
Whitesnake
Yeah.
have outsold Deep Purple in America. So
Right.
you've got 1987, which is almost ticking to diamond status, which is 10 million copies. And I think the highest selling album in America is Machine Head, and that's only nudging around 2 mil.
Right.
So, but don't get me wrong, they were big in the 70s, early big, because in those days, they didn't shift as many units as they did in the 80s.
Yeah.
You didn't have bands like, didn't have Michael Jackson Thriller 50 million. That was just unheard of. It, like the 80s were just wild for selling multi-million dollar
Yeah.
million albums.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you completely. I think too many lineup changes has tarnished the legacy of Deep Purple, and that's a bit
Definitely.
sad. But this
Yeah.
is a truly great album. It's number 4 of my top 5. I think everyone should check it out. It's getting a lot of critical reappraisal. A lot of people didn't like it in the day, but now they like it. They go back to it and they go, wow, that was really good. So
I totally agree. Yeah, check it out. It's a great listen.
absolutely. Well, as always, Joe, fantastic to talk to you. Great to chat with you. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation, and please check out Joe's channel, Average Joe. He's got a lot of stuff. He talks about music and sport. What more is there in life?
Yeah, yeah, whatever interests me. Yeah,
It's
it's fun. But
music
I
and
just want to
sport.
say once again, it's always great to be on your channel. You have a fantastic channel. Please, everybody out there, Peter does a great job. Great guy, great channel. Subscribe, like it, and thanks for having me on once again.
Absolutely. And same with Joe. Check out his channel. All right.
All right.
Catch you later. See you.